The restaurant fell into a silence so sharp it could cut through glass. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died on trembling lips. Everyone turned toward the man standing protectively beside a small, trembling girl, his hand resting on her shoulder with quiet strength. His eyes, steady but blazing, locked onto the elegant woman across the table. She looked as if the ground had vanished beneath her. Her manicured fingers tightened around the edge of the tablecloth, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The words he just said still hung in the air like an echo that refused to fade. "She's with me." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then, slowly, realization began to ripple through the crowd, through her expression, a mixture of disbelief, guilt, and something far deeper she hadn't felt in years. Before we dive deeper into this emotional journey of love, redemption, and second chances, take a moment. If you believe that kindness can heal even the deepest scars, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Together, let's keep stories of hope and compassion alive. The man's name was Rowan Hale, a 33-year-old single father who had learned to build his life from the ashes of heartbreak. Once he had dreams of becoming an architect, of traveling, of giving his little girl the world. But when life turned cruel and his wife walked out days after their daughter's birth, leaving nothing but a note and a ring, those dreams crumbled. What remained was a man with tired eyes and calloused hands, holding an infant who wouldn't stop crying until she was pressed against his heart. He named her Mira, meaning miracle. Because that's what she was, his reason to keep breathing. Years later, the two of them shared a small, sunlit apartment above a bakery in the heart of downtown. Every morning, Rowan would braid Mira's hair, pack her lunch with handwritten notes that said things like, "You're braver than you think," and walk her to the same public school he once attended. The other parents wore suits and drove SUVs. Rowan wore a faded shirt, carried coffee in a reused mug, and smiled anyway. He worked long shifts at a construction site, repairing luxury homes he'd never be able to afford, but he didn't mind. Every evening when he returned, tired and dust-covered, Mira would run into his arms with laughter that made everything worth it. What Rowan didn't know was that their quiet world was about to collide with one that couldn't be more different. A world of glass towers, private jets, and cold boardrooms. That world belonged to Aurelia Dane, the billionaire heiress everyone in the city talked about but no one truly knew. At 29, she was the youngest CEO in her family's history. Her name was synonymous with perfection. Her company's face on every magazine, her signature on every luxury development deal. But behind the flawless image was a woman who hadn't known peace in years. Her father's empire, though glittering, had been built on expectations that strangled her spirit. Every smile she wore in public was rehearsed, every handshake a transaction. She had everything money could buy, except love that felt real. One Tuesday morning, fate brought their worlds together. Rowan was overseeing renovation work at the new Dane Urban Living project, a towering complex funded by Aurelia's company. He'd been assigned to inspect safety systems after a faulty elevator nearly injured a worker. He didn't know that Aurelia herself would be visiting the site that day, flanked by her assistants and bodyguards, her polished heels clicking against the marble floors like a metronome of control. When she saw him, a man in a gray work shirt, sleeves rolled, eyes focused and unflinching, something in her paused. He wasn't looking at her with awe or greed like everyone else did. His expression was distant but dignified, his tone calm and clear when he spoke about safety concerns. For a fleeting second, Aurelia forgot she was the CEO and simply listened. But their interaction ended there, professional, brief, forgotten, or so she thought. Weeks later, Aurelia's world took a strange turn when a fire alarm disrupted a charity gala her company hosted at one of their hotels. Guests rushed outside into the daylight chaos. Among the confusion, Aurelia noticed a small girl crying near the entrance, clutching a torn drawing. No one seemed to notice her. Aurelia knelt down instinctively, her gown brushing the pavement. "Hey, are you lost?" she asked gently. The girl sniffled, pointing toward the building. "My daddy's inside." Moments later, Rowan emerged from the crowd, coughing from the smoke, panic etched across his face, until he saw Mira safe in Aurelia's arms. For a moment, relief and gratitude softened his usually guarded features. "Thank you," he managed, voice low but steady. Aurelia smiled faintly. "She's brave," she said, returning Mira to him. That might have been the end of it again. A brief encounter between two opposite worlds, but destiny, it seemed, had more in store. A week later, Aurelia found herself sitting in a modest cafe downtown, her assistant having accidentally booked her a meeting there instead of a luxury lounge. It was raining outside, and she was halfway through reviewing blueprints when a small, familiar voice said, "You're the lady from the fire." Aurelia looked up to see Mira, her big brown eyes bright with recognition, and behind her stood Rowan, holding 2 cups of coffee, equally surprised. That accidental meeting changed everything. They ended up sharing the table because the cafe was full. Rowan, though clearly uncomfortable, thanked her again for what she'd done. Mira chatted excitedly about school and art while Aurelia listened, smiling more genuinely than she had in months. For once, she wasn't Aurelia Dane, CEO. She was just a woman enjoying warm coffee with a father and daughter who treated her like an ordinary person. Days turned into weeks. What began as coincidence became quiet friendship. Aurelia started dropping by the cafe, always by chance. Sometimes she'd bring art supplies for Mira or books about architecture for Rowan. In return, they'd invite her to join them for lunch in the park. Slowly, laughter began to replace loneliness. But the world doesn't take kindly to love that crosses lines. When photos of Aurelia with Rowan and Mira surfaced online, tabloids exploded with headlines like "Billionaire Heiress spotted with construction worker," "Secret romance." Her board members frowned, her PR team panicked, and her father called her in fury. "Do you know what this does to our name?" he roared. "He's using you." That night, Aurelia sat in her penthouse, tears blurring the city lights. Her phone buzzed endlessly with messages urging her to issue a public statement, to deny everything. But how could she deny the only thing that had felt real in years? The next morning, she asked Rowan to meet her. They sat by the lake, where Mira fed ducks nearby, unaware of the storm brewing between them. "I don't care about what people think," Aurelia said, her voice trembling. "But I don't want you or Mira hurt because of me." Rowan looked at her, weary but kind. "We've been hurt before," he said softly. "But at least this time, it's for something that matters." They didn't know that someone from her company had overheard their conversation, and within hours, leaked another story, one that accused Rowan of manipulating Aurelia for money. His job at the site was suspended pending investigation. Whispers spread, doors closed. Even the cafe owner hesitated to meet his eyes. Still, Rowan didn't fight back publicly. He focused on Mira, on keeping their little world intact. But when he saw Aurelia's face splashed across every news channel, forced to attend a corporate dinner where her father announced her engagement to a European investor to put rumors to rest, something inside him broke. And that's what led to this moment: the restaurant, the crowd, the silence. Aurelia sat at that long mahogany table, surrounded by executives and photographers. Her smile was mechanical, her spirit suffocating. Until the door opened. Rowan stood there, holding Mira's hand. He wasn't dressed for the occasion, just jeans and a simple shirt, but his presence commanded the room. Gasps filled the air. Aurelia froze as her father's voice thundered. "What is the meaning of this?" Rowan stepped forward, calm and composed. "You can say whatever you want about me," he said evenly, his gaze locked on Aurelia. "But don't involve her. She's with me." Then he looked down at Mira, who squeezed his hand tighter, her small voice trembling as she added, "And he's my hero." For a long, suspended moment, Aurelia said nothing. Then, with tears glistening under the lights, she stood up. Her voice, when it came, was soft but unshakable. "Then I'm with him too." It was the first time in her life she had chosen something, or someone. Not for her father, not for the company, but for her own heart. That night, Aurelia walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind her engagement, her family's approval, and a lifetime of hollow perfection. She didn't know what the future held. But as she held Rowan's hand and Mira's laughter echoed beside them, she knew she was finally free. Months passed. Aurelia resigned from her company and started a foundation to support single parents and working families. Rowan found work designing community homes, finally using his architectural skills. Together, they built a life not of luxury, but of warmth, small moments of peace that no money could buy. On a sunny afternoon years later, Aurelia watched Rowan teach Mira how to ride her bike in the park. The little girl wobbled, laughed, and looked back to see both of them cheering her on. Aurelia smiled, tears forming, not from sadness but from gratitude. Because sometimes love doesn't come crashing in with grand gestures. Sometimes it walks quietly into your life when you least expect it, and stays.